Do you consider yourself a disciple of Christ? What is a disciple exactly? We find that in our text today in Luke 14:25 and 26. Well, let's look at the text. And now great crowds accompanied him, and he turned and said to them, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father, his own father, and mother, and wife, and children, and brothers, and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Now, friends, there's a lot to digest in those two verses. In verse 26, he cannot be my disciple. Let's start there. Notice what Jesus said at the very end of verse 26. If you don't if, if you don't follow these things, you cannot be my disciple. Well, the word disciple simply means a follower, one who follows the teachings of. If you look that word up in the English dictionary, someone has rightly, I think, described this idea of being a disciple is that a student, I'm a teacher and I have lots of students. A student follows the teachings of the teacher, but a disciple follows the teachings and follows the teacher. The idea of being a disciple is completely following committedly someone or something. And here, Jesus is talking about being his own disciple. And I think about the passage in Acts that the disciples were called Christians first in Antioch. So, do you consider yourself a disciple of Christ? Now, the question that goes with that is this: have you considered what it costs to be a disciple? Now, if I look at that verse again, and that's what I want us to do, if anyone comes to me and does not. Now, there are many who would come to Jesus. So we learn there is a differentiation in this text. There is a difference from coming to Jesus, wanting to love him, wanting to serve him, wanting to be saved by him. There's a difference in coming to Jesus and being a disciple. There are many today who would come to Christ, except they're not willing to pay the cost. They're not willing to become a true disciple. And the cost, according to this passage, does not hate his father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. That word cannot, before we go any further, you know what the word cannot means? Well, in English, you may be thinking, well, duh, it means you can't do it. In the Greek language, that word is an absolute negative. Not, no. In other words, cannot, there is no passing. It isn't going to happen. You can forget about it. It's not happening. Jesus used a very strong adverb here in the Greek language to say, if these things do not happen, you will never be able to become a disciple. But when you read that verse, can you imagine someone who is new to the idea of Christ and new to the idea of the Bible being shown this verse? If you don't hate father, mother, if you don't hate wife and son and daughter and even yourself, you cannot be a disciple of Christ. You can't be a Christian. What in the world is that all about? The word hate here, in fact, if you look up the word hate in this original language, it does carry the meaning of detest, detesting something, someone. But it also carries the meaning of to love less. Make sure you understand that Jesus here is not saying to be my disciple, you have to turn your back on or literally detest the person who is your wife or is your husband or is your son or your daughter or your father or your mother. And you have to look into the mirror at your own image and say, I hate you. In fact, that kind of thinking would be completely opposite what the Bible actually teaches and what Jesus actually taught. This is about, and here's the takeaway for today, this command is about priority. What is most important to you? What is most important to you? This command does not take away from those in your life. In fact, it adds the best to them. If you love Christ and serving Christ and being his disciple more than anything else, then you are a better father, a better mother, a better son, a better daughter, a better husband, a better wife, a better person. Are you a disciple of Christ? Thank you for listening today. May God bless you with a great Thursday.